Hello, friends. Me here, and today we're going to talk about the latest tech for Cindra that have popped up during these past couple of weekends during the Calling Akihabara and the RTN Week 2 weekend. Cindra has been a hot topic as of late because of her nerfs, and for a good reason. The effect of the brand with Cinderclaw ban wasn't as apparent during the time of the announcement, but from my personal experience, the more that I've tried to prepare for the Calling Hong Kong and the start of the RTN season back then, the more I felt how backbreaking the bans are. Yuki Lee Bender has discussed how the deck has to be rebuilt from the ground up because of the brand ban and how huge of a consistency hit that Syndra takes because of it. It might not be apparent at first glance. I mean, after all, most Syndra decks only use around 3 to 5 copies of Brand with Cinderclaw. And I mean, we have a lot of Draconic starters, right? But for those who have played a lot of Syndra, we can really feel its effects firsthand. After all, those 5 cards almost always ensure that we can get 3 Draconic Chain Links. And in turn, we can easily get back our Connive Retributions for free with Syndra's ability, or even use our Dragon Scalar Flight Path. The Wrath of Retribution ban, on the other hand, is kinda necessary and something that most Syndra players kinda reluctantly agree on. It's almost always an I win button, and it can steal matchups and games that Syndra might have no business of winning. So the ban kinda allowed her unfavorable matchups to remain unfavorable, but still workable. So now we kinda have to work harder on it. And yeah, we can't rely anymore on that 1 in 15 chance that we can draw into a card that easily turns things around. Because of this, the search for the new archetype has begun since calling Hong Kong, and initial efforts have proven futile. No Cindra in top 8, and she seems to be overshadowed by the rise of KO and Arachne Marionette as the premier aggressive decks in the format. But thankfully, the past weekend has unlocked a lot of Cindra tech and ideas moving forward, thanks to the success of players in a number of huge events. You have 2 weeks of RTNs, you have Calling Akihabara, and of course, Battle Hardened Gdańsk. And yeah, the hero has been seeing a lot of success for the past week. So let's look at the new stuff that they have cooked up. First up is the biggest Cinder achiever of the weekend, Gordon Kaw, who is on a tear with the hero since calling Sydney. His, and I'm guessing, Paetiong Lau, who is, I know, working behind the scenes of the on the deck. Their answer is pretty simple and clear. Just add more draconic density and filthy generators. We now see demonstrate devotion and lava vein loyalty added to go along with the much debatable copies of 3 Oath of Loyalty. So despite a lot of downsides to having 3 of these, its merits have grown stronger with the brand ban because the deck simply needs more draconic starters as well as the genius edition of Enlightened Strike. Of course, I'll never miss this chance to tell you guys that I had Easter eggs in my Cindra deck since last year. But it was a bad inclusion back then, and it's a good inclusion now. It functions as a catch all fix to most of the deck's inconsistency problems, much like how you see it used in Ira decks, where it fixes all red or all blue hands. Also, blocking for 6 and throwing back 7 is already good value. And even if you use the draw a card function of Enlightened Strike, it is great in a deck where every attack action can chain into one another and it is pretty much usable. So for the sideboard, Gordon kept their sort of kind of trademark 8 defense reactions. So you have Shelter from the Storm, 3 Sink Belows, and 2 Fate Foreseens. The Calling Sydney interview, if I remember correctly, with Pei Chung Lao, the Dex creator, he told that these are mainly for against Dash IO along with Flamescale Furnace because there are a lot of DOs in their area, and she is an unfavorable matchup for Syndra. But it's nice that those 8 defense reactions right now in this current meta is doing double duty against Arachne, Marionette, KO, and even Kasai as well. So in a way, these more broad tech cards are better for a variety of matchups as opposed to say something more linear like Hunt to the Ends of Wraith, which we'll discuss more later. I really like that bouncing links is still there. So my teammate, Pro Tour Singapore top 8 Nath Bea, has advised me multiple times in the Florian matchup to use links since they can effectively play from a one card hand and use the remaining cards to just stop every mass trigger that you do for the rest of the game. And with Mass of the Pouncing Links, at least you can get some value of, I guess, 5 value from it, from like a lava burst or something. That was back then. On the other hand, because of the Rootbound Carapace ban, Florian builds nowadays are more aggressive because they need to include more offensive options like Cadaver Stealing to Decompose. There might be more merit nowadays to still keep using Massive Momentum just to make sure the Florian doesn't get into their way too crazy 4 or 5 card plays. Unfortunately, we didn't have a Cindra versus Florian semifinals match from calling Akihabara. It would have been a great help in analyzing the current state of that matchup. Also, Bouncing Links is our best deck against RKO, so we get that massive life lead as soon as possible when we pop it early, and then they kind of have to play catch up for the rest of the game. Well, we just try to just get ahead of them by dumping all of our hand onto their face every turn. So because they need more space for draconic cards, Throw Dagger gets cut. It became a one-off. But Warmonger's Diplomacy stays at 3 because of how good it is against a lot of the meta heroes right now, like Dash.io, Gravy Bones, Kasai, and even Mario. Let's move on to the other Cindra deck that made it the top 8 of calling Akihabara. And this is Kazuya Murakami's Blue Cindra. Finally, a Blue Cindra makes it to the top 8, and it is everything that you've imagined a Blue Cindra deck to be. So you have your blues, all 12 of them. You have Spreading Flames, you have Rake Over the Coals. This has a theoretically higher ceiling than the Red Line Cindra. It's not affected as much by the loss of Brand with Cinderclaw because it can always start its offense with a Kunai of Retribution before playing the remainder of its Draconic attacks. It's also the deck that has the highest Draconic density, as Kazuya-san seemed to want nearly every attack action to be buffed with Spreading Flames or, Rake Over the Coals during its big turns. So you won't see stuff like Pain in the Backside or Ravenous Rabble here. The only non-draconics we see are Art of the Dragonfire, which when you turn draconic just simply converts to more damage. Cut Through, which is just super reliable and one of the best attack actions in a deck that can easily flick a lot of daggers. And this deck flicks a lot of daggers. You have Blood Runs Deep in 3 copies. You have, what was that? Yeah, you have Throw Dagger at 3 copies as well, in addition to the Flick Knives. So you can almost always activate Cut Through. And then finally, of course, you have your Salt the Wound, which initially seems a little out of place considering we already have not spreading flames, but Lava Burst, as well as Art of the Dragonfire. But as you can see later, as we go through the deck, Salt the Wound is one of the best finishers that the deck has because of how long or how many hits that the deck can do when it is at its best. Also, Salt the Wound, it's a yellow, so it pitches for 2 resources, which you can use to do Dagger, and then after that, Bloody Runs Deep is free. And then you can buy back your daggers again with Cindra's ability. So because of its use of daggers, and then you can throw them, and then you can buy them back, the deck can be very hard to block because between the long chain links and all of the flicking, a lot of damage goes in. And this is the main justification for playing Salt the Wound. For example, and this is kind of crazy because it involves energy potion. So let's say you have an energy potion in play, right? So you draw it to your next hand. You have a 5-card hand with 1 in the arsenal. You get a blue and a Spreading Flames. So you go Spreading Flames and then Kunai for 2 because Spreading Flames already buffs the kunai because its base attack is 1. And then you do another kunai for 2. And then you throw them both with Blood Runs Deep, which is also now buffed with Spreading Flames. And then you can use your energy potion to have 2 resources so that when you buy your daggers back with Cindra's ability, you can attack with them once again. So that's already 6 chain links that the opponent has to block. And you haven't flicked a single knife yet. So if you play out the rest of your draconic stuff, a mask trigger is almost always inevitable during those big power turns like that. And if those turns are buffed even and rake over the coals, that's a lot of damage. And because it is attacking with either 1, 2, or 4 damage breakpoints, it's very easy to get a hit in, and it counts towards Salt the Wound at the end. So if you can end your turn with something like a lava burst into Salt the Wound, yeah, that's really big damage for the opponent. And that is like one of the main benefits of playing a red line Cindra deck. So for Kazuya-san's sideboard, see minimum defense reactions. He only has 3 shelter from the storm. It just goes to show that the deck just wants to keep on hitting and not really mind the defense. Because what's the point of having more defense if you can just hit them back harder? Art of the Dragon Scale is back again in full force here, and it threatens a lot of the relevant armors in the current metagame. Flick Knives in the mirror matches, you have Storm Striders against Verdance, Valiant Dynamo against Kasai. And not only that, if your opponent has blocked already with their Teklo Foundry Heart with their Grains of Blood Spill and Savage Sash, you can also threaten them now with Art of the Dragon Scale. So a couple of Battlefield Bastions also make it in as poppers, and funnily enough, the deck can also attack with these because it has the blue to support them. The same can also be said with the inclusion of Tide Flippers over the commonly used Claw of Vincerakai. Also, in case you forgot, since it has been a really long time since Ninjas last did this, you can actually pop Tide Flippers to chain your Lava Burst and or Salt the Wounds together. So 2 copies of Sigil of Solace can also be found in the deck. This is great against RKO, especially if they're playing in a way where they're just slightly ahead in life and an instant 3 health can totally overturn the match. But of course, these shine the best in the Verdance matchup, where they might be even forced to miscalculate during their kill turn because they thought that, hey, what are the odds that this Cindra is playing Sigil of Solace? But it turns out he's playing 2 of them. Finally, Hunt to the Ends of Wraith is the anti-arachnid tech. It's actually funny in a way that it actually hits 3 heroes that are sort of popular in the meta. You have the very popular Arachne Marionette now, right? And then you have Arachne Huntsman that's steadily gaining popularity. And then, of course, you have those loyalists to Slippy who are still playing the deck despite the previous 2 being objectively better options. Next is we go to the winner of Battle Hardened Gdańsk, which is Filip. So Filip has seemed to reach into the same conclusion as Gordon regarding how to adjust the deck. More draconic density and more filthy generation. He also runs 3 oaths and 2 e-strikes and even 1 throw dagger. However, despite that, there are a few key differences in their deck list. The most notable one would be March of Loyalty. While Gordon opted for the more stable Lava Vein Loyalty, Filip went for the option that's a little less inconsistent but have a bigger upside if you can give it go again. With 8 guaranteed filthy generators and 4 cards which marks the opponent, it is actually very much possible to give March of Loyalty go again. I mean, worst case, it blocks for 3, but even as a 4 damage ender, it's not too bad. It's pretty cool, actually. And I'd also like to use this opportunity to shout out my teammate, Tommy, who was a huge advocate of both March of Loyalty and Tag the Target, even before the Brand with Cinderclaw ban. So, Tommy, you were right all along. Let's move on. So, that all you got is another one of those flexible tech cards that's useful in multiple matchups. against Kasai, Arachne, maybe even mirror matches, and even against Dio. Filip also has 4 defense reactions, but he has 7 of them. So 3 Sync Belows, 1 Shelter from the Storm, and 3 Fate for Sin. So it's a bit of a reverse in the numbers. So he also is using 2 Warmonger's Diplomacy instead. And he is finally using one of my favorite cards of all time, Snapdragon Scalers. So for the matchups that don't require much armor, since we're on the offense most of the time, like the Earth matchups and Kasai, go again from Snapdragon Scalers might be all you need to complete a long chain link that would otherwise have been cut. Like, for example, if somehow you get 2 March of Loyalty but you don't have a Filthy Generator. It also works great on E-Strike and Snatch, which Filip has 3 of. Okay, finally, let's go a bit more local. So here in Manila, we currently had 470 plus players, RTNs, and one player 7-0'd the Swiss rounds in 2 of them using Cindra. So this is Mike's list, and she also shares the same solution as the previous red line decks. More draconic density and more filthy generation. His list, though, leans towards consistency a lot more with 3 copies of Demonstrate Devotion instead of 2, like in the previous decks. He has 3 main deck Hunt to the Ends of Wraith because, it's still a draconic starter with an occasional upside, especially if you can mark your opponent on Chainlink 1 or in any previous Chainlink with Tag the Target, which Mike also has 3 copies of. Because Mike is a totally sane, normal guy, unlike the other red line champions. He puts 2 Oath of Loyalty. I think you mostly need 2, but he doesn't have E-Strike. So there's pros and cons to both builds. You be the judge. So he also has 2 breaking points to punish those arsenals. And one last notable inclusion is the removal of pain in the backside. So he opted to have Tag the Target and Fire Tenet First Strike instead. In his sideboard, though, there's an interesting choice of poppers, which is Chest Puff. I'm not really sure how it differs from Battlefield Bastion or my personal favorite, Rally the Coast Guard. But my guess is that because it blocks for a solid, reliable 3, compared to the other poppers, which is like 2 block with some other condition attached to it. He is also using 8 defense reactions, but interestingly, 3 of them are Loyalty Beyond the Grave. My guess it is that these come in for the longer, grindier matches where he still has to block, like Arachne, Kasai, Dash IO, maybe Dorinthia. But he also wants to have that big payoff during the big turns when he can find space to throw out a full 5-card hand plus loyalty from the grave draw. So that's a 6-card hand. Plus a mass draw, that's 7. So yeah, it's pretty good. So 2 copies of Warmonger's Diplomacy and Cloth and Serakai rounds up his sideboard. One notable thing that wasn't here is Flamescale Furnace, which could have complemented both his Prism and Dio matchups better. I personally think, we can remove 1 chest buff and add that 1 flame scale, and it would probably work better. But hey, he's the guy who's 7-0'd twice, so he's probably onto something. And that rounds up most of our major Cindra tech that we've seen this past couple of weeks. If you found this information useful, please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching and good luck in your remaining RTN season. Take care, guys.